Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me today in Read Naturally Live, Checking Initial Placement. My name is Claire Hayes, and I'm excited to talk with you today about our first portion of progress monitoring for our students who are using Read Naturally Live. In your chat box, I have a link to the handout. That link was sent in your reminder emails as well. Of teacher responsibilities that come along with having your students work in Read Naturally Live, monitoring student performance, of course, comes after planning and setting up and placing your students and training your students. But that is the place where we spend the vast majority of our time. It's the majority of the school year. And monitoring student performance is broken up into two sections: checking initial placement and keeping students challenged. Today, we're going to focus on the first one. And there's another webinar coming out soon on keeping students challenged. So please sign up for that event that is next week. Whenever you're monitoring student performance within Read Naturally Live, it's important that you're always trying to maximize achievement. You want students to make as much progress as possible. And we intuitively know that students will make more progress if we challenge them, right? But we can't make them frustrated. We'll lose them if they get frustrated. So we want the content that they're reading to be as hard as they can handle without getting frustrated. We want the goals that we set for them to be reachable, but not easily, right? And so finding that balance is a very big part of implementing Read Naturally Live effectively. As I mentioned at the beginning, there is checking initial placement and keeping students challenged. We are going to talk about checking initial placement, which happens after students complete 3 stories, okay? It needs to happen before students complete their 7th. So if your student have completed somewhere between 2 and 6 stories, this is a good time to do checking initial placement. If your students have completed 7 or more, then that second phase of data analysis is the place that you would be at once you have more than 6 passages. That would be for keeping students challenged. And again, that webinar is coming soon and available on our website. So checking initial placement, if you notice, it has the word placement in there for a reason, because it is the second phase of our 2-phase placement process. In order for students to start working in Read Naturally Live, you had to conduct initial placement, right? You took them through that placement within Read Naturally Live. You selected a level to start testing. Maybe they had to try 2 or 3 different levels until you found the right fit. And that could not be avoided because students needed to get in the right level with the right goal in order for them to have content to begin working in Read Naturally Live. Checking initial placement happens after students have been using the program. You're going to take the data from the first 3 stories, ideally around 3 stories, and you're going to see if that data was information that you had on the initial conducting placement day. Would you still have put them in that level? Is it the right level? And would you still have given them that story goal, right? That words correct per minute story goal that was assigned at placement, that was based on their placement score. Now, we know kids have good days and bad days, and so that placement might have been on one of those extremes. So we want to go ahead and check that initial placement after 3 stories so that we can be sure we have our students in the right place. The place where you can find the information you need in order to do this process is called the Students at a Glance report. Okay, in a minute, I'm going to show you how to access that report within your Read Live account. But the Students at a Glance report, you'll notice there's 4 sections. The first one that's white is information about your student series they're working in, the level they're working in. Then we have fluency data section, comprehension section, and the phonics section. So you can see in the lower left-hand corner of this table, we see that this particular data report is on a student who's working in the sequence series, level 2.5. The student has passed 3 stories. And now we see that first column is cold timing score. Notice there's 2 numbers separated by a forward slash, and they are identical. The reason those numbers are the same is because this student has only passed 3 stories. You see the first number in the column is how the student did after 3 stories. So it is the average words correct per minute score on the first 3 stories the students worked in that level. The second number is the average cold timing score of how the student did on the most recent 3 stories in the level. If your student has passed 3 or fewer stories, these numbers will be identical because their first 3 stories are their most recent 3 stories. Okay, but once they pass 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stories, now they're pulling from different data points. Okay, and of course, other information that's in there is the goal, the hot timing, expression ratings, average number of practices, average score on their quiz, average number of words in their word list, and how they did on their average number of words in their retell, and then how they did on their word list. So I'm going to quickly show you how you can run this report from within your Read Live account. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as a teacher into my Read Live account. If I go to my home page, I can locate the reports tile at the very bottom of my list. It's also in my drop-down menu, the very last item. The first couple rectangles are really administrative reports, right? Your roster, password, that sort of thing. The next one in is Read Naturally Live report. And the very first report under that section is called Students at a Glance. Okay, you will select your student or students. You can select many of them. You can select them all at once. You can decide that you're only going to run a report. You're going to run reports based on the student's grade. So I am going to only see my 5th graders. Now I want to run a report on just my 5th graders. And click Generate Report for selected. What you do then is select their date range. It auto-fills to August 1st of the current school year. And then you click Generate Report, right? So let's get back into the PowerPoint. And we're going to go on to talk about what we're looking at from that data report and how we're comparing it to the initial placement table. So you're going to take the student's average cold timing score from your Students at a Glance report, and you're going to see if that words correct per minute cold timing score fits in the range for the placement, the level that they're working in. Okay. If it fits in the range, if their fluency words correct per minute score is within the range for their level, then it's a good level for them from a fluency standpoint. Okay. We want it to be within that range. If it's not, then we need to make a change. We need to either lower the level or raise the level depending on which side of the range it's on. The other thing we want to do is look at their quiz. Remember back to when you did conducting initial placement, probably wasn't that long ago. And you didn't check for comprehension there. Some of our kids struggle more with comprehension than fluency. We've got to catch those, right? Now, I know that you see that 60% and that doesn't sit right with teachers. We don't want our students' quiz scores at 60%. Of course we don't. This is not saying that we're happy with this. All it's saying is that I do not need to lower this student's level. If your students can comprehend at least at 60%, that means that this level is okay from a content standpoint. Now that 60% isn't totally arbitrary. Research shows that students who can comprehend at 60%, at least at 60%, are able to show improvement in comprehension with that content. Okay, so that's where that comes from. You're not going to tolerate it forever, but just at the beginning, so long as they're at 60%, you can leave them in the level they're currently in. So the first question we ask is going to be on data from Anna. Anna's a 7th grader, and we're going to try to see if her average cold timing score is in the range and what her quiz is like. So we would run that Students at a Glance report that I just showed you how to run. I'd identify Anna on my list of students, and I would ask myself these questions looking at her data. So is Anna's average cold timing score in the range for her placement table? Well, what information do I need to know? Well, first thing, I need to know what level Anna's working in. Notice on this placement table on the upper right side of your slide of your screen, it has the initial level in the left-hand column and the right column is words correct per minute score. So I need to know what the level is so I can see which range is appropriate for that level. Okay, so if Anna's working in level 5.6, her range is going to be 80 to 100. All right, so I then need to see what is her average cold timing score right now. It's 90. She's smack dab in the middle of that level. So if placement day, I were to have gotten 90, if Anna were to have read 90 words correctly on level 5.6 on the day I did placement, the computer would have said, this is the right level for her. Choose this level, okay? So do we think that we should keep her in this level? We do, because her quiz is at 77. It's not where we want it ultimately, but it's definitely not too low to where we would want to lower her. So her fluency rate is within the range and her quiz is good enough. We're going to keep her going in level 5.6. Okay. Now let's look at the level analysis table to see kind of the rationale behind this. We can see that Anna's average cold timing score, 90 words correct per minute, falls within the range for level 5.6. We can see that Anna's average quiz score, 77, is within the range of 60 to 79. That's that middle column. And these two pieces of data meet in that shaded cell that says continue level and provide comprehension support. Now remember, comprehension scores between 60 and 80, that's a signal to the teacher that a student needs targeted comprehension instruction to reach 80% or more. Okay, otherwise the student can't continue to work in the level, but we're going to allow it now. So Anna's initial level is correct, as we can see by this table. We're wanting to keep her going in the level that she's in. This table is available on our website, and I'm going to direct you to it in just a minute. But first, we're going to talk about Anna's goal and how to adjust that if needed, okay? In order for us to know whether or not she has the right goal, we need to know what it is we're looking for, right? So here are some guidelines. First, we want the student's goal to be above the average cold timing score by about 30 words if it's a young student, so 4th grade or below. Older students tend to be able to make more significant gains in similar amount of time. And so for a 5th grader and above, we want the goal and the cold timing score to be about 40 words apart. Okay. We want the student's goal to be slightly less than the average hot timing score. Okay. So think about that for a minute. The student's goal. Well, in order to pass a story, students need to reach their goal, right? They're not passing stories if they're not reaching their goal. So their average hot timing score has to be at least at their goal and likely a little bit above. Now, we consider the difference to be too great if it's 10. Okay, a double-digit difference means the difference is too great, means that it indicates a change is needed. Then finally, we just want to make sure they're practicing the right number of times. So somewhere between 3 and 10. Now, this varies a little bit. You have to use your teacher judgment. As I'm sure you well know, there's some kids who are happy practicing 7, 8 times. And there's other kids who start to get frustrated at 3 or 4 or 5. Okay, so you might need to do some adjusting based on kind of those individual needs of the students. So here is the same information I just provided you in written form on that previous slide. Here it is in a picture form. So for those of you who do better with a visual pictorial image, if you will, it's providing the same amount of information. The cold timing score should be 30 away from the goal for young students, 40 away from the goal for older students. And that hot timing score should be pretty close to the goal, within 10, 9, 0 to 9 word difference there. So we're going to ask ourselves 3 questions while we look at Anna's data. We're going to ask about her cold time, the relationship between her cold timing and her goal. We're going to ask about the relationship between her hot timing and her goal. And then we're going to ask about practices. So let's take a look at this data. We can see from this report that Anna's goal is 120. Okay. Her cold timing score is 90. I just circled it in red. So is the difference between her goal 120 and her cold timing score 90, is that about 40? Actually, it's not. It's only 30. It's actually 10 words away from where we want it. It's maybe too big of a difference because it's 10 words away from where we want it to be. So that indicates to me that maybe her goal is a little low. The next thing we look at is her hot timing score, average hot timing score in her goal, and the relationship between those two numbers. That's a 12-word difference. Again, we want it to be a single-digit difference. So again, I'm thinking maybe this goal could be raised because she's going way above it on her hot timings. And then finally, she is practicing the right amount of time. So of the 3 questions, I answered, or 2 of them indicated to me that the goal might be too low. Okay, so 2 out of 3 tells me I'm going to go with raising her goal to 130. All right, now we have a similar table for goal calculations on our website. And again, I'm going to send you that link. But let's take a look at this level analysis to see the rationale here with regards to goal. So we can see that the story, we can see that the average cold timing score was 90 and her initial goal was 120. And that's indicating that it's too low because it's more than 10 because it's too far away. And then the average hot timing, the goal, the relationship there, we want it to be less than 10 and it's 12. She's practicing the right number of times. So again, we have 2 shaded areas in the column that says the goal is too low. We only have 1 shaded area in the column that says the goal is appropriate. Okay. So that tells us we need to raise her goal a little bit. All of this information, all of these tables are available to you in what we call the Checking Initial Placement Calculator. So coming through in your chat box now is a link to our Checking Initial Placement Calculator that is on our website. Okay. That calculator is accessible to anyone at any time from our company website. All you need to do is run that Students at a Glance report, take the data from that report and enter it into the fields on our website on this calculator. These results, the information it's going to provide you, it's going to tell you what to do. It's going to tell you if you should raise a level or goal and what you should raise it to. If you should lower a level or goal and what you should lower it to. Now this, should only use this calculator if your student is on the first 6 stories. Okay, once they're past that, then you're into what we call keeping students challenged. You're into the second phase of data analysis. All right, that's a different webinar. But if you're 6 or fewer stories, checking initial placement is where you're at. So this is what that calculator looks like on our website. And here's the Students at a Glance report. So once you run your report on your students, you may rely heavily on this calculator the first few times you do this process. I don't know about you, but when a process is new to me, I'm a little unsure of myself. And so this calculator is there for those of you who are new to the process and want to become, build your confidence. So take your students' data, the first couple students, plug it into this Checking Initial Placement Calculator. Then maybe you want to do it without the Checking Initial Placement Calculator and use the calculator to check your work, right? Pretty soon, you're not going to need the calculator at all. But when you're starting, you're going to want to put in the series and level right into the calculator on the website. You'll put the number of stories passed. All this information is on the Students at a Glance report. You'll put the cold timing, the last 3, the average of the last 3 cold timing scores, the goal, average of the last 3 hot timing scores, number of practices, and the quiz. It is going to spit out a recommendation. Look what it says here. It says continue level 5.6 and provide comprehension support. It's exactly what we saw in those tables. It's exactly the recommendation I gave. It also lists the goal recommendation and it tells you to raise the goal to 130. Okay. If you click on these little triangles next or underneath the recommendation, those tables that I showed you appear and it shades in where your 2 pieces of data converge together so that you know what to do. Okay, so if you're interested in seeing the rationale behind it, clicking on these little triangles next to the level calculation details and goal calculation details, it will provide you with that table for yourself. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at Rob's data and we're going to look at Lee's data and we're going to see are Rob and Lee in the correct place. Okay, so let's walk through this process together to take a look at Rob. So Rob is a fourth grader working in level 3.0. We can see that on his report. The first question is his average goal timing score in the range for the placement level. So we need to know his level 3.0. So if I come up to this placement table on the right-hand side, I can see that the first row is where the words correct per minute score is listed for level 3.0. If I come down and look at his cold timing score, it's right here. I'm circling it at 70. It is not within the range. We want him 30 to 60 for 3.0 to be the right one. If Rob on placement day, on original conducting initial placement day, when I gave Rob a level 3.0 passage, if he had read 70 words, I'd have tried level 3.5 for him, because the computer would have said to me, this level's not right. Why don't you try the next level up? Okay, because he would be outside the range on the high end. All right, so right now I'm thinking I got to raise his level, but I want to make sure he's understanding well enough to do so. And I can see in his quiz, he's well above 60%. Okay, he's at 93%. So level 3.0 is too easy. We're going to raise him to 3.5. So what I'm going to do now is show you where you can do that within Read Live. Okay, so we're going to go navigate on our toolbar here over to the Read Naturally Live section of the staff module. I'm going to find Rob's name here on my list. And when I scroll to the right, I see that there is an edit button. If I click on that edit button, I can come in here and alter his series level and goal. All right, what I decided to do to Rob was to move him from 3.0 up to 3.5. Then I can click Save and Close. Okay, because when you decide to raise a level, you also decide at that same moment to leave the goal the same. We don't change both things at once. We change one at a time. So as soon as you realize a student needs a higher level, you also know they're going to keep the goal the same. Okay, so Rob's goal is currently 95. I'm going to leave it at 95, but I'm going to make the content that he's reading a little bit harder. I'll click Save and Close. And now I can see that Rob, the next time Rob logs in, he's going to be presented with 3.5 passages. Okay. All right. The nice part of that is now you're done with Rob, because you don't need to decide on his goal. You decided to raise his level, so that decision was made for you. You're going to leave his goal the same. So we can go and look at our final example today. Our final student is Lee, and Lee is a third grade student. Here's his data. Try to find his level that he's working on with your eyes. It's this first section right here. He's working in the sequence series, level 2.5. All right. So that again is this first row. His initial level is between 1.0 to 3.0. And we want his words correct per minute to be within that range. It is. So this tells me if I got 41 with him on his conducting initial placement on his day that we tried to put him in the right level, the computer would have said 2.5 is the right level for him. Go ahead and pick one of these levels written at that mid-second grade level, right? So right now I'm thinking he's in the right level. But I want to make sure he's understanding well enough that I don't want to lower his level, right? So from a fluency standpoint, I know he's in the right spot because his fluency score, his words correct per minute score, is in the right range. Lee also has good comprehension. He's well above 60%. So that tells me we're going to continue Lee in level 2.5. His words correct per minute score fits right within that range. That's exactly where we want him to be from a fluency score if we decide, in order to work in this level. Obviously, we want him to be out of the intervention and in mainstream reading at grade level. But in order for 2.5 to be the right level, we need him between 30 and 60, and he is. His comprehension's good enough. So we believe that the level is correct for Lee. Now, because we think the level is correct, that means we need to go on and check the goal, right? Because you only raise one thing at a time. We know we're going to keep the level the same. Now I want to see, is his goal okay? Remember back to Anna. Anna's level was right. She was supposed to be in level 5.6, but her goal was too low. Okay, so with Anna, we changed the goal. With Rob, we changed the level. Well, what's going to happen with Lee? we're going to ask ourselves the 3 questions. The first 2 are the relationship from the goal to the cold score and from the goal to the pass score, right? And then we're wondering, just checking to make sure he's practicing the right number of times. Okay, so let's take a look. First thing we want to know is the average cold timing score. Lee's is 41. Okay. Is that about 30 words away from his goal? His goal is 70. So yeah, it is. It's really close to 30 words away, right? It's 29 words away. You're not going to get much closer than that, right? So this is telling me his goal seems appropriate. It's about 30 away. So it's challenging, but not too challenging. The next thing I want to know, is the goal equal to or just a little bit less than his average hot timing score? Okay, so the difference between his goal and his hot timing score now is 4. That is appropriate. It's a single digit difference. If it's a single digit difference, it's good for that question. Okay, once you get into 10 or more word difference, that's when you are thinking maybe it's too easy. Okay, and then our last question, how many times does he practice? He's practicing 6, so that seems appropriate. So what do you think with Lee? We already know he's in the right level. His quiz was strong enough and his words correct per minute fit within the range on the placement table. So we kept him in 2.5. And his goal also seems to be appropriate, right? He's about 30 words away from his goal when he does his average cold timing score. He's able to reach his goal and he's not shooting it way out of the water. And so it seems to be the good spot for him. So placement day put him in the right spot. We're going to continue Lee in level 2.5, continue Lee with a goal of 70 words correct per minute. So that is the process checking initial placement. All right. Checking initial placement, that most helpful resource is going to be that calculator, checking initial placement calculator. Again, you just run that students at a glance report, plug the information into that calculator, and you're going to get the information you need. We also have the checking initial placement instruction guide, which goes into in-depth written descriptions of how you make these decisions. So if you're somebody who prefers to get a really deep understanding of it, rather than relying on the calculator, that guide and instruction sheet is available on our website as well. We also have a video about checking initial placement. So if your students aren't quite to the point where you can do this, maybe in 2 weeks they get there, and you're going to want to maybe watch that video right before you do the process with them for a little refresher. And then, of course, we do have our online training courses that cover various topics for all the 4 programs within Read Live, not just Read Naturally Live, but also Word Warm-Ups Live, that phonics and decoding program, 1 Minute Reader Live, the independent program, and our Spanish version as well. So please do reach out to us as questions come up. The next session, Keeping Students Challenged, we talk about what to do about when you have data that is not the same, right? Because once they pass more than 3 stories, you're going to look for growth in those different areas. So that's the next webinar. We'll also talk about in that webinar how to problem solve when kids aren't making the kind of growth we want, because that also happens. And so do check out that webinar, Keeping Students Challenged, for the second part of our progress monitoring within Read Naturally Live. And when questions come up, please reach out to us. It's why we are here. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we appreciate your time and attention. Take care.